Okay, so my friend wanted me to watch these creepypasta things. Well, it is very hard to scare me. But the things that scare me the most are clowns and guys with chainsaws. Those are what scare me the most. So, she sent me 2 videos. One video I absolutely flipped at. And then I started watching this one, and I kind of started to freak out. So I figured, why not record it? So, here we go.
As they got closer, I could see they were children. As I looked at each one, I noticed that they were all horribly disfigured and mutilated. Some had cuts all over their bodies, others were severely burned, and others were missing limbs, even eyes. The children enveloped me, clawing at my flesh, dragging me to the ground, and tearing inside me. As the children tore me apart, and I faded away, all I could hear was laughter. Horrible, evil, awful laughter. I woke up the next morning in a cold sweat. Suddenly I was awoken by a loud bang coming from the kitchen. I sprung out of bed and hurried down the stairs. When I got to the kitchen, I was horrified. Everything on the counters had been thrown to the floor. Our dog Fido hung dead from the light fixture. His stomach was cut open and stuffed with candy, the same type that James was eating earlier that day. The shock was quickly broken by a sharp scream coming from James's room, followed by loud crashes. I quickly grabbed the knife from the drawer and moved up the stairs with a speed that only a father whose child was in danger could have. I burst through the door and flicked on the lights. Everything in the room was knocked over and tossed to the floor, and my poor son was in his bed crying and shaking with fear. A pool of urine stained the sheets. I scooped up my child and ran out of the house, went next door to Tom and Linda's house, and luckily they were still awake. They let me use the phone to call the police. It didn't take them long to arrive, and I explained what happened. They looked at me as if I was crazy. They searched the house, but all they found was the dead dog and 2 trashed rooms. The officer told me that someone had probably gotten into the house and done this right before making a quick escape, when they heard me coming up the stairs. I knew it wasn't true. All the doors were locked. None of the windows were open. Whatever was in my house didn't come from outside. The next day, James stayed inside. I didn't want him to leave my sight. I went to the garage, found my old baby monitor, and set it up in his room. If anything comes into his room tonight, I was going to be able to hear it. I went to the kitchen, grabbed the largest knife from the drawer, put it on my nightstand. Imaginary friend or not, I'm not letting anything hurt my little boy. And soon enough, night came. I put James to bed. He was afraid, but I promised him that I wouldn't let anything hurt him. I tucked him in, gave him a kiss, turned on the nightlight, and before closing the door, I whispered to him, "Good night, James. I love you." I tried to stay up as long as I could, but after a few hours I felt myself drifting off. My baby would be safe for the night, and I needed to sleep. And just as I laid my head down on the pillow, I heard a soft noise come from the baby monitor that I had put on my nightstand. At first it sounded like interference, like the kind a radio would make. But then it turned into a soft moan. Was James asleep? Then I heard it. The laugh from my nightmare, that horrible laugh. I sprung up from the bed and grabbed the knife from under my pillow. I rushed over to James's room and creaked the door open. I tried the light switch, but it wouldn't come on. I took a step in, and I could feel the warm, thick liquid on my feet. Suddenly, James's nightlight came on, and I could see... I could see the absurd horror laid out in front of me. James's body was nailed up on the wall. The nails pierced through his hands and feet. His chest was His chest was cut wide open, and his organs hung down to the floor, and his eyes and tongue had been removed along with most of his teeth, and I was disgusted. I could hardly believe that this was my baby boy.
Oh my God.
And then I heard it again. That soft, desperate moan. God. James was still alive. My baby, my poor boy, in such pain, could barely cling to life, and I ran across the room and I vomited on the floor, but my sickness was interrupted by a horrible cackle coming from behind me, and I spun around, and while I was still wiping bile from my mouth, then out of the shadows emerged the fiend responsible for the horror. Laughing Jack. His ghost-white skin and matted black hair hung down to his shoulders. He had piercing white eyes surrounded by black rings. His twisted smile revealed a row of sharp, jagged teeth. His skin didn't look like skin at all. It almost looked like rubber or plastic. He wore a patchy black and white clown outfit with striped sleeves and socks. His body itself was grotesque. His long arms hung down past his waist. The way he was poised made him look almost boneless, like a rag doll. He let out a sickening laugh as if to let me know that he was pleased with my reaction to his work. I turned around slowly in front of James and began to laugh even more at the horrific sight that he laid out. That was enough to shake me from my terror, and I snapped, "Get away from him, you bastard!" I rushed at the monster, raised the knife above my head, and stabbed down at him. But as soon as the knife touched him, he disappeared like a cloud of black smoke. The knife passed right through him and pierced James' still beating heart, splashing the warm blood on my face. No. What have I done? My baby. I've killed my baby. I immediately fell to my knees. I couldn't hear. I could hear sirens in the distance growing louder, and my boy, my sweet baby boy. I promised that Daddy would protect you, but I failed. I'm sorry, James. I'm so sorry. Police soon arrived and found me in front of my son, still wielding the knife covered in my baby's blood. The trial was short. Insanity. I was placed in Ferropolis House for the Criminally Insane, where I had been for the past 2 months. It's not bad here. The only reason I'm awake now is because someone is playing Pop Goes the Weasel outside my window. I'll talk to the orderlies about it in the morning.
This is one of the things that got me the most. Like, look at that. And then at the very end, right here.